Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is very exciting to have you along for the ride with us today. I would love to welcome an amazing new guest to the podcast, Mr. Warren Patterson from OrderEase. Welcome, Warren.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And you're calling in from the great white north of Ontario, Canada, right?
Yeah, we're up here. We just got our first little bit of snow. So yeah, winter's starting to settle in Canada here, but that's to be expected in December.
Totally expected. And it's amazing because Canada is a hotbed of technical innovation, especially in our world, the B2C, D2C, e-com, omni-channel world. Famously, Shopify is from the Great White North, and there's lots of other tech companies that cut their teeth in Canada and either still based in Canada primarily or have based themselves as a headquarter out of the United States and then service Canada and the rest of North America and Europe. Canada's definitely got it going on when it comes to technology. I spent almost 30 years living in New Zealand, and I almost think of Canada as a slightly larger New Zealand in the sense that New Zealand punches above its weight for its size, tiny little population, 5 million people, but lots of great tech companies have come out of New Zealand, famously Rocket Lab, Zero, lots of big companies, Allbirds came out of New Zealand, and Canada feels very much the same, punching above its weight in terms of technical capabilities.
Yeah, the innovation is really great in Canada in many different things, whether it's technology, medicine, and everything. And I think it's because we have a good federal government that supports innovation and gets us grant money and everything to build on to that. So yeah, Shopify is a great example in the e-commerce space of taking it from basically a surf shop, I believe, or a skateboard shop and building a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, pretty impressive. And before we get into OrderEase and you've been doing this for nearly 12 years now, but before that, you come from a business consultancy background, but you've also been a retailer as well. And so I think that really, you're not just a theorist, you're also a doist. And so the reality is you've got this varied background, but it clearly leans towards the technical and business side, but also, you've got your finger on the pulse of what it takes to drive a retail business and omni-channel business forward too.
Yeah, and this is where it all came from. If I look at my background, I spent 9 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was in their supply chain e-commerce practice. And then I woke up one day, actually it was October 31st, I was in New York. And I phoned home and I said to my wife, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm getting your son, who was my firstborn at the time, dressed to go out trick-or-treating." And I was mad at myself that I was missing my son's first trick-or-treat. So I said, I flew home and I said, you know what, we got to make a change. So we opened up a garden center of all things. I knew nothing about flowers. I didn't know a petunia from a pansy. And at that time, I was part of a very big buying group, which was actually affiliated with Lowe's. And so here I was, a member of a big buying group, but I had about 200 vendors and I was doing business with them all by fax, phone, or email. And I'm like, how inefficient would that be? And so I went back to my professional experience and seeing what really the big box stores were doing in the early 2000s, which was building out their supply chains, connectivity with their vendors. They had all the systems in place that really they didn't have to do anything. They just let their vendors do all the work. And I realized, you know what, there needed to be a piece of technology that sat in between independent retailers and their vendors. And that's where OrderEase was born from, was the fact that here I wanted to solve my problem. And I knew that if I had this problem, the other hundreds of thousands of independent retailers, which are in all different industries, they had exactly the same problem because we were using the same sort of technology sets, if you will.
And what's interesting about this is that you picked up on something that has been pretty well known in the B2B world for a very long time. And the reality is that, sure, retailers are buying off vendors, and that's a B2B relationship, but I'm talking like between manufacturers and then distributors and wholesalers oftentimes. There's EDI, there's punch-out/e-procurement integration. And so we have a situation where computers are enabled to talk to computers, right? So we've got on the procurement side, we've effectively got a PO that's generated in some sort of e-procurement system, and then it's shipped off by some sort of electronic pipeline over to the vendor, gets into their ERP or the WMS or whatever it is for fulfillment, and then all that information is sent back electronically to the buyer with very little human involvement at all. And it feels like you picked up on this traditional concept from the more hardcore B2B world, and you said, look, we clearly need something here as mom and pop level, SMB level retailers. We need technology that's accessible to us to be able to help automate our procurement experience, because that takes up a significant percentage of our time otherwise. And so why don't I come up with a solution that is more accessible to SMBs as opposed to just massive enterprises or massive distribution companies? So it feels like you took a leaf out of the traditional B2B book and said, look, let's democratize access to this type of technology.
Yes, it sounds easy, but it's really difficult because the difference between an independent retailer or a mom and pop shop and a big box store is they don't have the purchasing power to tell their vendors, you're going to now use my technology.
Yes.
So this is the chicken and the egg problem that we had to solve. And the other thing to realize is that a lot of big, very big, multi-billion dollar distributors and manufacturers do business with independent retailers. So because of that, their business processes were still manual. So we have a situation now where we had to solve both sides of the supply chain to make this whole thing work. And then when you start to look at supply chains and you go from manufacturer to distributor to retailer, and sometimes in plumbing industry, you may have multi-levels of distributors. The information has to flow. So think about it. The images, the product information has to go from manufacturer to distributor and distributor to retailer. And if anywhere along the line that's a manual process, that's a lot of time, there's errors and everything like that. And more importantly, then the orders have to flow from one level to the other down. And all that inefficiency builds into higher costs of products, higher retail prices, the whole bit. The way we went out and solving this problem was this. We said, okay, we're going to solve the problem for the vendor first. And to do that, we have to build a very broad platform that does a little bit of a lot. Let me explain what that means. When we go to a vendor, we say, look, we know you're getting these orders from all these different sources. It could be EDI sources like Home Depot and Lowe's. It could be like API, like Amazon or Wayfair. They're still sometimes manually managing this. But then they have sales reps. Sometimes the sales reps are writing it on a paper, emailing it in. They could also have PDF orders still being pushed into their system by manual input. And also, they then are looking to find a web portal to have their other independent retailers to connect to it. So what we said was, we're going to build technology that solves that manual order process for every one of those different order types. So it doesn't matter where the order comes from, we can solve that vendor's problem. Once we did that, we then flipped it on the other side and we went to the retailers and said, okay, we now have technology that allows us to connect to your vendors in any different ways and is attractive enough so that we can bring your vendors on. So then we went to the retailer's point of sale technology. So we have partnerships with NCR, with Epicor, and Carriage, and they've now built the integrations into us. So those technology providers now can offer to every one of their customers a vendor managed service provider through OrderEase so that their retailers can connect to their vendors. So difficult problem, but you had to layer the problem in to be able to solve it. And that's where we are now, is now we have retailers working in their technology that's communicating with the vendor's technology.
So do you consider yourself a distributed order management platform? Do you consider yourself an integration middleware platform, an EDI platform, a punch out? What class of software, or what, if we had to put you into a niche or a bucket, what do you consider yourselves as when you go to market? Because creating a brand new category of software is really difficult, because you then are responsible for not only road mapping and providing the vision for the software, but also positioning it, marketing it, selling it, etc. And so when you make your pitch to both vendors, buyers, etc., within this B2B supply chain, for lack of a better term, how do you position yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a question that we're still trying to solve, because you're right. We have something that pulls all those together on a single platform, and we are the new sort of, if I call it middleware, but we do it all. And we do it all for both sides. So the way we go about to market is we start with the vendors and we say, okay, where's your biggest problem? You know what? My biggest problem is just with my sales reps. Okay, perfect. We have a sales rep app. We're going to solve that problem first. And then we start coaching them. You got PDFs? Yeah, okay, we solved that. Now, how about your EDIs? And how about this? How about that? So there is an education, but I can tell you this. When I sit there and I do a presentation, or any of my salespeople do presentations, and they paint the vision, there's so much time where people get the aha moment where they're going like, wow, I get this now. I have a single piece of technology that I can do business with my trading partner on both sides of my business. So with my customers and with my vendors, if I'm a distributor. And when you're a distributor, you need to be frictionless, which means that you have to make everything flow through your business so efficiently so that you can make money. And really, that is what OrderEase is doing, is making businesses frictionless, but we have all the technology that does with punch outs, with sales rep apps, EDI, but it's all tied together. And what's really unique about OrderEase is that we hold the data. Most companies that do EDI, they just translate it from one document to the other. They don't hold the data. And when you don't hold the data, you can't do validation, you can't do sophisticated workflows. None of that information, none of that workflows happens when you don't hold the data.
But you also don't necessarily pitch yourself as a PIM system either. But if you're distributing product information to the buyer, and they can consume that either as a punch-out catalog or via EDI or whatever it might be, you fulfill some functions of a PIM, especially if you're not just supplying name, SKU, price, inventory. If you're supplying more than that, if you're also supplying descriptions and attributes and product imagery and all that sort of stuff, then there are some elements of almost like a PIM system, but it's not really a PIM system because you're not necessarily using that or providing that internally to the seller for them to organize and collate and upload all their data. But you might pull data out of their PIM system and then push it via your system into the buyer's hands so that they can make a buying decision, or so that they've at least got the data in their hands where they can merchandise it further, whether it be to their customer or through a retailer. So it does feel like maybe it's more thinking of you like a data syndicator rather than a PIM system, right?
So it's interesting because PIM's been out in the world for a long time, and people think of PIM as just as you described it. But the problem with PIMs is those PIMs really don't connect to the trading partners' systems. And therein lies how a lot of vendors have PIM systems, but they don't get really well used by their external customers. They get used internally for their marketing department, sales teams, and all that good stuff, but really they don't get used externally. And if you think about it, if you're a retailer or a buyer in life, you want to know everything about that product before you make that buying decision. And so inside OrderEase is a complete PIM system. It has everything from holding all different multimedias, whether it's a video, PDFs, images, all that's there, all the attributes to that, because those attributes need to be shared as you go up the supply chain. And that's what OrderEase is. Yes, I say, and in fact, I know that our vendors are using us now as a source of truth. Because when you take a PIM system and then you have to layer into it pricing, and then you have to also layer in inventory. But when you look at the complexity of that, is not all retailers get the same price from that vendor.
Of course, yeah.
And so you now have more complexities there. And so OrderEase is being able to pull this all together so I can deliver every retailer from a vendor their specific price with their specific inventory and with all the pricing rules around B2B, which are very complex because you'll have sometimes if you buy one unit of this, it's $5, but if you buy 5 units, it's now at $4.50. All those pricing rooms are all built in so a retailer knows exactly what their price is. So we call it PIM Plus, which is product information management system plus inventory plus pricing.
Because obviously you've got to get inventory and pricing direct from the ERP, whereas you might get the enriched data from their own internal PIM if they've got one. And then I guess your system can function as an internal PIM. If they don't have a PIM today, then they can leverage your PIM. I'm guessing they can do all their internal data enrichment workflows inside your PIM before they externalize and syndicate that data to their trading partners, right?
That is correct. And now what's really happening is independent retailers are now looking for e-commerce. And part of my challenge as an independent retailer with e-commerce is I didn't have the time. to manage all the images and descriptions and everything. That's number one. Number two, I didn't have the processes or the capacity of my staff to be able to handle online orders. And so now what's happening is we are now matching up vendors who do direct-to-consumer fulfillment with independent retailers. So we extend the catalog that's sitting on our system for those vendors. We extend it into the retailer's Shopify or WooCommerce site. And now all those images and descriptions auto-update. So when a vendor changes an image, it actually changes the image up on the independent retailer's website. And when the order comes from the independent retailer, so when a consumer places an order on an independent's website, the order drops into OrderEase, we send it down to the vendor drop ships to the end consumer. Now we have independent retailers that have retail store presence having e-commerce with all their vendors set.
I guess the other thing is they can offer potentially an endless aisle scenario online that they can't because you can only maybe display a subset of your total catalog in store. If you've got limited physical retail space, you might be able to display, I don't know, 20% of your available catalog in store, whereas you might have 10, 20, 30 times that inventory available online through all your vendors. And so you can either take one or two routes. You can either set up your own marketplace and effectively have all those vendors plugging into your marketplace and you take a clip of the ticket, or you become the seller of record and effectively they drop ship for you by you automating. I guess the routing in that scenario becomes a little more challenging, and I guess you're probably going to tell me, well, OrderEase handles that. So OrderEase knows, okay, I've got inventory in these 5 stores. I want to ship from store if I've got it. If I don't, I want to ship from this centralized warehouse, which is an owned warehouse. And if I can't ship from there, then I want to ship that order off to the vendor to fulfill directly in a drop ship scenario if the first 2 options fail. So it feels you're more of a two-way order management system plus a data syndicator, because in a traditional order management system, I'm only worried about how I'm going to ship out my orders once I've received them. How do I route the order for fulfillment, whether it's shipped from store, whether it's shipped from a DC, whether it's shipped from a 3PL, whether it's shipped via dropship. Traditional order management systems, they're only worried about what happens after you take the order. They're not worried about how you receive the order. But it feels like OrderEase is concerned with both directions of the order flow, plus syndicating the data to the buyer so that they can complete the transaction and get that order back into your hands as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah, that's absolute. So if you look at the systems that we are connecting, we're connecting the retailer systems. We put the order workflow over to warehouse management systems, into the logistics systems like ShipStation, and we can change where that goes based on who that customer is. And we then push that data back into the vendor's ERP system so that they account for it, invoice it, and all that stuff. So when you start connecting all those 3 systems together and get the data flowing, because it's the same data that comes from each of the systems or is required for each of the systems. They may not need all of it, but they all need parts of it, right? And that's what OrderEase does, is connecting those workflows together. Because in the past, you'd get an order, you have to enter the ERP system, then you have to jump over to ShipStation, and it was a lot of effort. Really, you're right. OrderEase is just facilitating all the workflow. We say that we never create data. We always get data from one side of the other to be able to move it. That's all OrderEase does.
You are a middleware platform in that sense because you do provide the essential plumbing, whether it's an EDI connector, whether it's a punch-out connector, whether it's an e-com connector, but also, I guess from an order workflow perspective, that by definition would mean you also connect to marketplaces, right? Basically, I need to know if I'm a vendor and I'm selling via B2B marketplace or even a D2C marketplace, I need to know when an order comes in via those marketplaces. I need to import it into my system, whether it's an ERP, WMS, whatever it is. I need to get that down for fulfillment, and I need to be able to do my order routing based on rules, right? So I'm guessing you've got a rules engine in your platform as well.
Yeah, we definitely have a rules engine that moves things or order pieces around depending on who the customer is. And we actually even take the data, translate it sometimes because, for example, someone may order in cases, but the other party needs it in eaches. We do all that translation. Now, I just wanted to, you touched on something. We actually provide technology for those e-commerce places. For example, Wayfair, you're going to find OrderEase on their app marketplace as an integrated provider, because those types of businesses are always looking for, how can I make it easier for my vendors to connect to? So we actually service those types of companies, Wayfair and Amazon, as being an app integrator for their party as well. So really what we're doing is helping all sides of the party make it easier for trade.
And so not only do you pull orders down from those marketplaces so that the vendor can fulfill, but also I'm guessing, do you then push the listings up into the market, those product listings up there as well? So you're also taking the place of, say, a channel advisor or an omni-channel listing tool at the same time.
Absolutely. So we'll push the product information, the images, the pricing, and the inventory in real time up to those different channels. We have connections into Rhythm, so it doesn't matter whether it's in through an EDI channel, we can push that data, into an API channel, we push that data. So we make it a much, and the great thing about it is we connect once to their ERP system, every channel is now connected digitally. We make it very scalable. And so if you're a vendor and you're doing business with, let's say, these 5 EDI companies, to add another EDI company, all you do is tell OrderEase, go make that connection for me. There's nothing more you have to do internally. So we have now vendors on our platform that are now going, okay, I want to go here now, because the cost of adding another channel isn't as great anymore because they've already got that integration built.
Yeah, so I think we almost have to think of you as bi-directional order management, listing management, PIM system, EDI platform, punch-out platform, and an iPaaS on steroids, effectively.
Yeah, they'll do CRM, they'll do HR and all this other stuff, but we're so focused on order management that we perfected orders management. We have finite controls on the workflows, which allows you not to have any workarounds. We have it now such that we have integrations like NetSuite, Spire, QuickBooks, Sage, where all you're doing is putting your credentials into our system and we automatically synchronize with those platforms. There is no IT work that's needed anymore. And so we can get people up and running. They can become scalable far quicker than you can with most products that are in the market, where they actually have to deploy IT resources just to do that integration.
And I guess that means, by definition, you also are an inventory management system if they're not already doing inventory management inside of, say, an ERP. If they're using just an accounting package like a Xero or a QuickBooks or something like that, then they don't do inventory management in those platforms. So you take over inventory management in those integrated scenarios, correct?
100%. We do inventory and we do pricing because QuickBooks has a very basic pricing methodology. So we can actually enhance that. We enhance the PIM. So with QuickBooks users, we actually give them the functionality that starts to become like a NetSuite without the NetSuite cost.
Sure. So you effectively, they still manage the financials in a simple accounting package, but we get ERP-like functionality from an inventory management, from an order management, you don't supply the WMS capability, right? Not yet, at least.
No, we plug in to many warehouse management solutions. We plug into many ship station type solutions, logistics, parcel carrier solutions as well. We don't do that.
And so you are not responsible for direct carrier integrations in any way. So pick-pack dispatch is managed by other systems that you then integrate with.
That is correct. Because they do that really well. So we're going to leverage that. Yeah. It's payments. So we're just about to introduce payments into our platform, which is the last stage of the whole order management because we have shipping notices, we have invoicing. So now we do payments. And when we start to introduce payments and you start to think about the B2B, it's not just credit cards. Now we can do ACH because a lot of times retailers have credit available for the vendors, but now we know exactly what invoices are outstanding, click a few buttons, pay those invoices instantaneously. We also then will be able to extend this into financing because vendors are able to then take orders, invoices, receivables, inventory, and go get that financing just like retailers can. So when I get inventory sitting on my store floor, I can now get financing for this. OrderEase has all that data, so we're going to be able to extend this right through the whole financing chain from payment through to financing.
And reconciliation, I mean, it's like bridge financing or it's Shopify Capital or any of the other accounts receivable based financing.
Yeah. So the one thing that's really different about OrderEase when we look at some of the solutions that are on the market, the retailers and the business we have are real. We'll have some retailers that'll have a single location that have $75 million in sales. Like, these are big businesses for an independent retailer. A lot of some of the solutions that are in the market, they're dealing with the lower end, $1 million, $2 million for retailers. Now, we're sitting in real industries like the lumber and building material industry, the garden industry, the pet industry. Those are businesses that are big, and really is an untapped market. When you get into the automotive, that's pretty digitized right now, but in these other industries, not so much.
And do you see yourself primarily as a solution for independent retailers and their suppliers, or also further up the supply chain between, say, manufacturers and distributors? Do you sell into those two different buckets or two customer cohorts, or do you really see yourself primarily as a solution for independent retailers and their suppliers, whether that's a manufacturer selling direct to them or whether it's a distributor selling direct to them? Where do you feel like you are best positioned to sit in the marketplace?
Yeah, so right now we're focusing on selling into the independent retailers and accessing their vendor base. That's the greatest leverage we have now, especially when you have partnerships with companies like NCR and Epicor, which will have tens of thousands of locations that are using their technology. And the great thing is, for example, Epicor, you'll have 5,000 users that are in the lumber building material industry. They all have the same vendor set. So we now come to them, both Epicor and the vendors, to say, look, we'll be able to light this all up. 5,000 retailers will have all their vendors all digitally connected all at once. And this is the exciting part, is that there is nobody that's out there solving that problem right now.
And it's not your intention to then also be a solution for the independent retailers and their end customers, whether that's in the retail store, whether that's selling through a marketplace, whether that's selling through e-com. It's not your intention to help get their listings out of their internal systems into a marketplace and bring those orders back down for fulfillment in their system, right?
We do that for those that want to get connected into Amazon or up into their Shopify. We have that connection, but we just move the data. We don't develop the systems that are above. We call this above the crust and below the crust. Above the crust is from the retailer to the consumer, and below the crust is everywhere from the retailer all the way down to the supply chain. So we only focus in on below the crust, if you will.
Wow, absolutely incredible. So truly a B2B solution. That's your absolute laser focus is B2B.
Yeah, for sure. See, the other things that we're going to be developing here, and this is really interesting, and we purchased actually an developing here, and this is really interesting. And the reason we did actually has some really strong data sets that are out there. And my vision was that we have a lot of data inside OrderEase, but more importantly, when we have the integrations with the point of sale side of retailers, we're going to take the data from there, bring it into our analytics, and then be able to share that with the vendors. And that data is not available to vendors right now. They have no clue what the retailers are selling, how much, what their inventory is. But now we're going to have effectively the ability to have vendor manage inventory, be able to put AI over top of this analytics platform so that vendors can walk in and have really intelligent conversations with independent retailers to say, you know what, if you carried in this market, you could increase your sales by another $50,000. Why? Because the data is there. We'll be able to compare this retail store that's in this town to this retail store that's in this other town that have the same geoeconomic features, and now be able to provide real intelligent selling solutions.
And is the reason that you integrate with point of sale systems mainly because the smaller independent retailers may not necessarily have an ERP or a PIM in the back end, and they're using their point of sale for kind of all the transactional data, they're using it for all their product data, they're using it for their pricing data, their inventory data, they're using it for everything, right? Even sometimes they're running their entire loyalty system out of POS, they're running all their returns through their point of sale system. Absolutely. And that's the next piece that we'll get into is reverse logistics, because that's a major part of this relationship between suppliers and sellers. But is that because obviously once you get to be a mid-sized retailer or bigger, you typically have a large-scale ERP that the point of sale system integrates into. You probably have also a PIM system that it integrates into and all the rest. So I'm guessing that that one of the reasons why you need these point of sale integrations is because for small chains or small single store independent retailers, their point of sale system is their entire operational system of their business.
100% it is. So when I ran my store, I had actually a point of sale system that was recommended to me by Lowe's. This thing was built back in the 90s. It was like a blue screen. You had to hit F4, all this. A lot of independent retailers that are in that lumber, building material, garden industry are using these older systems. The thing is, they don't want to upgrade. Their system works. They're older people, like they're in their 50s and 60s that run these stores. They don't want to upgrade. If they can get this additional functionality that we bolt around their solution, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, point of sale systems are absolutely critical in getting the connectivity between themselves and their vendors. And that's really what our focus is right now.
Nightmare all of its own, especially in that distributor to retailer or manufacturer to distributor space. This is a major pain point in managing what that looks like, putting products into quarantine on return, issuing RMAs, all these things. There's just a lot to this. And then when we give them a credit note, do we do it less shipping, plus shipping? There's all sorts of complexities around reverse logistics, especially in that B2B supply chain space. So do you also support reverse logistics within your platform?
We do have, I'm going to say, a basic reverse logistics product in there, and we just call it credit notes. Okay. And I'll give you this whole use case that we built credit notes functionality was in the pet industry. So sometimes a consumer buys 9 dogs a bag food and gets 1 bag free. There's a prime example. So that retailer has to keep track of the number of 1 bag frees they give. OrderEase now allows for that retailer to upload that one person's loyalty card with the images of the receipts, sends it down to the distributor. Distributor then can evaluate whether they take 50% of that credit and send the other 50% down to the manufacturer, or do they take it all? So we do have that built in. RMAs and all that just flows through our system. But yes, the credit notes, even damaged products, so on shipping and all that, our credit note module will work with that. It's a start. It's a good MVP, if you will. It's probably a little further than MVP, but it definitely does about 80% of the sort of the credit note requirements that are between an independent retailer and their vendors.
Wow. You've really thought through this with quite some level of I guess it makes sense considering you're almost 12 years old. It's not like you fell out of the tree yesterday as a fully formed product. How, like when you look out over the next 6, 12, 18 months, is there anything today that your customers are asking you for that you don't yet do? Or have you identified any other key gaps in the marketplace that you go, oh, we think there's no one out there doing this. We think we're going to own this piece because we think this is a gap we can really uniquely fill. What is on your radar that's super high priority?
Really, the biggest thing right now is putting AI through OrderEase. And AI can come in not only data analytics, putting AI over descriptions. We know all the PIMs have AIs there. We'll be able to optimize those descriptions based on sales channel. We'll be able to put AI in helping with pricing optimization. There is so much we can do with AI inside our platform because we're such a rich data. So that's probably our biggest thing right now. We're focusing in on is in the next 6 months is to start AI project, which is probably going to last us over 2 years just to put it all together. Also, we're looking at AI and how we can build out integrations faster and make it easier for companies to come to us and integrate into us. Those are probably the biggest things that we're looking at in the next 18 months. The core product is tight, it's there. We're actually just refining integrations that we have. We'll build new integrations when they come to us. So if a customer comes to us with an ERP system that we haven't integrated, we'll build it. We'll only build it and own it if we can see that we can create a partnership with that ERP system and we can actually sell more units that way. But yeah, it's more of an AI roadmap than anything else right now.
And how do you think about demand planning? Because obviously the bigger retailers, even they might be independents, certainly the bigger distributors, certainly the bigger manufacturers, they've all got demand planning either as a standalone system in their business or as a module within their ERP system. But when you're talking independent retailers and when you're talking small and medium-sized distributors that supply to them, oftentimes they're not really doing demand planning apart from perhaps in a spreadsheet with some macros. And demand planning is a major issue for these retailers, especially for the retailers that, for example, aren't running an ERP system at all, and they're using QuickBooks or Xero or something in the back office for bookkeeping purposes, they don't really know how to do demand planning, right? They do maybe a weekly or a monthly stock take, and then they go, oh, I think I'm going to sell five more of those next week than I did last week. And that's as far as it gets. And so how do you think about the demand planning challenge across the B2B supply chain?
Yeah, like you're right. Independent retailers, their technology, because it's old, doesn't have good demand planning software in there. I was running spreadsheets. I was building SQL queries. It was rough. It didn't even work. I'd be overstocked on one thing and understocked on another thing, and I thought I did a good job, right? And so OrderEase is really going to be that bridge for those independent retailers, because we just need the data, and then we'll be able to actually action off of that data. I actually believe that vendors actually have more intelligence when it comes to demand planning. And so if I can give the vendors the tools to then go and talk to the retailers to help them with their demand planning for the SKUs that those vendors are responsible for, I think everybody's going to win. Because a lot of times vendors are trying to figure out their demand planning with what are they going to make and how much are they going to make and everything like that. And really just optimizing the inventory that's in the system. I'll give you an example. There was a soil mulch supplier that just went gangbusters through COVID, because everybody's at home and they are gardening and everything like that. So 2020, 2021 sales went through the roof. And then what happened was 2022 came. What wasn't really calculated into the demand forecast was the amount of inventory that was still sitting at the retailer's place at the end of 2021. And so 2022 came, and it blew up on the soil mulch people because they didn't see the inventory that was sitting in the retail stores. So OrderEase, because of those integrations with the point of sale systems, will be able to pull that inventory down, give a global view on what the inventory is for the SKUs for those manufacturers that they have there, and then they'll be able to start to optimize it. The other thing that we'll be able to help independent retailers for is not only demand planning, but also price optimization, discount optimization, and stuff like that. Because a lot of times, especially when you're overstocked, you need to get rid of that inventory. But you don't know whether you should take a 20% discount today or just go 50% and let's get it out. With our data analytics, I believe we'll be able to provide those notifications, those alerts to say, you know what, it's time to put this thing on for 35% today. And once you sell through another 70%, let's just put it on for 80% and clean it out. So absolutely, my whole goal for creating this company was to really help the independent retailer, put them on a level playing field to the big box stores. Because the big box stores, they have all the capital in the world, they have the best talent in the world,
And the
they
tech.
can outcompete. And the tech. Like Home Depot's a tech company right now. You walk in there, that is a tech company.
They're a tech and logistics company. End of story.
End of story. And so my objective in life is to put the independent retailer on a level playing field for the tech and let their customer service take over, and they will thrive and survive. That's for sure.
Wow. And how do you guys make your money? How do you charge for your platform? Is it like a modular fee? I mean, you're a SaaS platform, so they're consuming it on a subscription basis. But is it the throughput through the platform, the number of SKUs held in the PIM? What is the matrix of the makeup of how you bill for your platform?
Yeah, sure. So the way the vendors play is they pay a subscription. They get so much transaction or throughput through our platform. And if they go over that, they pay a very marginal transaction fee. And everything is ROI based on our platform. They're getting anywhere for I've seen some people up as high as 20x, because you don't have the errors, you don't have the manual input. I can tell you this. When I was a retailer, I would put an order in. And I'll give you, I'd order black mulch and they would ship red mulch. And I said, you know what? I don't want red mulch. Nobody buys red mulch. Come pick it up. Well, it costs a lot to send us a truck to pick up that $700 worth of mulch. I'll just give you a credit. So they just wrote off $700, if you will, right? Because that was the most cost-effective solution for their error. For OrderEase, we can manage the ROI really effectively on the vendor side. So the vendors pay us a subscription fee with some order value attached to it. Retailers pay us a subscription fee to connect into our platform to be able to have those vendor communications. And that's just a simple monthly fee, if you will. And that's really how we make our money. We also have, inside of OrderEase, is for buying groups. And what a buying group is, like a co-op, where you'll have a group of retailers that are all under the same brand or have some sort of purchasing agreement, with this group of vendors. And OrderEase is able to organize those retailers and vendors together so that they can actually now transact together as a group. The benefit is the people that manage that group now have all the data insights to say, oh, look how many of this product we've purchased this year. I want a better
Collectively across the
price.
entire group, basically.
Exactly. And I want a better price now. No longer I want it at $2 a unit. I want it at $1.75. So we actually provide buying groups with a platform that allows them to have technology to be more efficient as a buying group.
And it might be, for example, it might be your independent garden centers that maybe have 2-3 stores each, but in an entire state in Canada, for example, they might all band together to create one single buying group of independent stores. And on their own, they might only have 2-3 stores worth of buying power, but they might have 100 stores worth of buying power if they band together and fall under the same buying group umbrella.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly how a lot of industries have these independents that have collectively come together to share ideas, to share purchasing power, to try and be a bigger company than what they are. And they just need a little bit of help to organize themselves. And even the big buying groups, they don't really provide the technology. As you found out with myself, there I was part of Rose, they didn't give me any technology.
No.
They're just doing deals, right? They'd have all these supply agreements in place and I could buy this and buy that. But we actually help even big buying groups be able to connect their members to their vendors.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. If you're facilitating the transaction, then obviously that provides the data to the buying group that they don't have to have their own internal analytics, or because oftentimes they're running very simple accounting packages as well. And they're just billing their independents on a 30-day credit cycle or something like that.
Yeah, even better. We actually help them with credit management because the buying group is actually responsible for the most part for the invoice between the vendor and that retailer. So they pay
Correct.
that first. But if they're finding that retailer is a little slow in paying the buying group, they can actually slow those purchase orders down as well. So they have real-time insight as to what their independent retailers are buying from those vendors that they are actually on the hook for. Credit management is another piece that we help solve in that relationship.
So if somebody in an independent is on a credit stop scenario, then they simply can't place orders through that buying group anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Or they can see if they're hitting the credit limit that they have with that buying group, because every retailer will have a credit limit that buying group establishes, and you get 100,000. And once you go over that 100,000, no, you can't buy anymore. So it just really helps everybody be able to have more visibility into the trade.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Listen, this has been such a fascinating conversation. It's certainly, in 455 episodes or whatever we got out now, having been in this industry for over 24 years now, I've never come across a technology quite like yours. I've come across pieces of it, certainly, within different software categories and fulfilled different parts of what you do, but certainly the way in which you bring it all together under one roof, under one sort of new category of software, if you will, that's certainly new to me. And it feels like if you're an independent retailer or someone that supplies them, this feels like an absolute no-brainer. And as of today, where do most of your clients sit? Are they in Canada? Are they in the US? Are they in Mexico? What is your target market for your software as of today? And where does that split lie?
Yeah, so we're about 65% in the US right now of
Right.
our customers, and growing more rapidly in the United States. And the reason for that is the technologies cross borders, vendors cross borders, retailers cross borders. That being said, we have partnerships with companies that are out of the UK that are now looking to introduce OrderEase into the UK. We are multilingual. We have English and French. I want to add Spanish. I want to add this. It's just changing sort of our data sets. We have customers now, or prospects now sitting in Australia because this technology is needed globally. And it's the same challenge. It doesn't matter where you are. As soon as you have independence in an industry, you have this problem. There is no vendor connectivity.
I love the transparency you're providing across the supply chain because, as you say, if you're an independent and you want to give visibility to your vendors of how much inventory you currently have in stock, the sky's the limit. You could just simply set a min-max level for either per location or holistically across your network and say, look, as soon as this ticks down to this number, just automatically ship out, just auto fulfill, auto ship my next shipment out for me. And so it definitely does. It creates fewer missed opportunities for the sale at retail, and it also creates fewer opportunities for the missed sale on the supply side because the retailer was too busy to do a stock take this week, for example, and so they were out of the product for an extra week when they should have had that product in stock because it was flying off the shelves because of seasonality or whatever it might be. It feels like it's going to help everybody within the supply chain miss fewer opportunities to complete the sale with the customer.
Absolutely. I can tell you when I was in retail, one of the biggest opportunities every retailer, especially independent, has is special orders. When Mrs. Patterson comes in and she's looking for a green shingle, and you know what? I don't carry a green shingle, but you know what? Let me just go quickly see. Yeah, I can get you a green shingle here by Wednesday, and here's your price. Would you like to place the order today? Yes. Because what happens right now? Mrs. P comes in there, looks for a green shingle, and the retailer says, "Oh, I got to phone my supplier and see if they have it in stock and see what my price is." She now leaves. She just goes down the road, may hit Home Depot, and they know exactly if they can get a green shingle for what price. So we're going to enable these special retailers to do special orders, and sometimes special orders account for 20% of the sales at independent retailers. It's a big
Wow.
number. Yeah.
I did not know that. 20%. That is
Up
insane.
to 20%. Yeah. And it's when you get into those specialty type retailers. Like I can tell you in the garden center business, we always have those customers coming in looking for this one variety of plant at this one size. I can't stock it all. So we would just have a special order list and we would just every week place for it. Now I'll tell you about e-commerce a little more. I know this because I have a family member that's in e-commerce, and they started with just a few SKUs on their website. And last year they increased it by another 1,500 SKUs now. And because they have more SKUs on their website, the basket size is higher and the average order size is higher, or the number of plants that are in the basket is higher. It actually will allow independent retailers to have more products on their website, which presumably will get them bigger order size. The other thing is we're always Googling around as a consumer looking for, well, what does the local retailer have in stock? A lot of times you go to their website, there's no products on their thing, so you don't even know what they carry. OrderEase will help them with that. So this whole idea of visibility and seeing the products that are available at the store, that's part of our goal is to allow them to show their consumers what they have.
And I guess it allows them at that point to, if they so choose, then they can have a pure drop shipping website where they actually don't carry any, they don't necessarily have a DC as an independent retailer. Maybe they stock their retail stores, but they don't necessarily have a dedicated DC for web sales or something like that. And their web shop is actually just a drop shipping storefront effectively.
They can have that, and that's what a lot of them are doing right now. We have some that are integrating their actual in-store inventory into OrderEase, and we're now able to push not only their in-store inventory up to their website, but also the drop ship stuff. So now they're actually having a website that looks like Home Depot. Here's how many's in store here, and here you can have this on Monday of next week. And as a consumer, you want to have that choice, right? Do I want to go pick it up right now, or do I want it shipped to my house? And when independent retailers have that technology that's available, the consumer is going to go to them every time.
And I guess then you can facilitate click and collect as well, or will call.
Yeah, exactly. Then we can then integrate those orders over into that DoorDash concept and pick it up and deliver immediately.
Or literally click and collect at one of their physical retail stores because the inventory they've got in the store, and you could say, look, I'm going to buy online and I'm going to literally go to one of their store locations and I'm going to pick it up, and then I'm going to process that through my point of sale or whatever it is on collection, and then I'm going to decrement my inventory at the point where they actually make the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly what the opportunity is now for these independent retailers.
Spectacular. Super, super exciting stuff. Always impressed when independent software vendors like yourselves are doing cutting edge, unique things that I haven't seen before. You think after 24 years in the space, you've seen it all, but it's this podcast, if it's proved anything to me, it's proved that I definitely haven't seen everything yet, because I keep having conversations with amazing technologists out there that are doing stuff that I've just never seen, and the market oftentimes has never seen. So hopefully I feel like I'm giving a platform and a voice to those people out there to get the good word out to the world. Now, as we come down to the end of our time together, hours absolutely flown by. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I've learned a ton. This is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question any question you like. It could be personal or professional. Mr. Warren Patterson, CEO at OrderEase. What is your question for me today?
You surprised me on this one. So now I got to take a second here
You
just to
got to
think
dig
about
deep.
what
You
my
got to dig
question
deep.
could be
I
here.
get it. I get it. I feel
Uh,
you.
Let me say this. So you've done 400 and some odd podcasts, right?
Yep.
Yep.
454, I think.
Perfect. Tell me one that was really unique that you thought was really making a difference in life.
Look, it is an interesting one. I think that I've been lucky in that most of my guests, they were either scratching an itch or literally their technology or their software or whatever they're doing sprang out of a passion project. It started out as a passion project. And then, oh, wow, okay, cool. This is not just a small niche thing I'm dealing with here. This is a global issue, right? And so it's hard for me to pick out one individual one that I would say, oh, is more maybe impactful than another. There is one, and their name, now that you put me on the spot, their name just literally has slipped my mind. I'll drop it into the show notes actually. But they are a rebuying. They're basically a marketplace platform for used clothing for the fashion industry. A brand that sells clothes into the marketplace. It provides an opportunity for their customers to send used clothes back to them, and then they can resell them as a clean, ready to resell used product. So an upcycling type of platform, right? And that's their whole. And it provides the returns process, it provides the inspection process, and the whole thing for these independent clothing retailers and brands to be able to, instead of their clothes ending up in landfill or at the back of a closet somewhere and unused, to be able to resell these products at scale. And I think for me, things like that are taking really novel approaches to waste in our industry or areas where we're inefficient, or I think some of the platforms that, for example, help to handle returns in a novel way, meaning that instead of automatically issuing a return and them having to ship it back, whether it be giving them a store credit and letting them to keep the product, or whether it be facilitating let's say the product, I don't know, arrived damaged, facilitating a way for them to just simply send an image of the product and validate the image and then give them a credit towards their account or a refund. I think people that are trying to, because at the end of the day, our industry oftentimes, meaning e-commerce broadly speaking, is oftentimes selling stuff that people don't necessarily need to impress people, that selling stuff people don't need, causing them to spend money they don't have to impress people they don't even necessarily, right? And that's just that's the cold, hard facts of our industry. It's certainly not the entire industry, but there is a lot of that, right? And there's a lot of this marketing and merchandising through FOMO and through influencers and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that people that are trying to help customers make better buying decisions, feel less bad about those buying decisions, and then helping people have less impact on the planet and less impact on their communities. And I just think that anybody that's doing things out there to make our industry better and more efficient, full stop, those things I find pretty exciting and pretty inspiring.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about taking it down to the human level and making someone have a living, you know, have a family and being able to survive and not have to just do business with the big box store. And I'm so behind those types of stories where, you know what, it's about the family. They have a business, they're working hard at it, and they succeed. That means more to me than having a big box store down the road for me. Yeah, I can see that.
Couldn't agree more. And I thought of the name of the company, Treat, Tret, branded resale. That's who they are. Yeah, they're doing some pretty cool stuff. And there's a few other platforms like yours out there that are trying to help SMBs be better, do better, and compete with the big boys and girls. So I love that. I absolutely love that. Listen, I've really enjoyed our time together. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and experience with me today. And I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.